Dearly beloved, we rank and file members and education workers have gathered here today, indeed during a very solemn, dark days, to commemorate another victim in the death of the march to austerity. As the McGuinty government continues his attack on the rights of working people, as he attempts to pass such foul and distasteful legislation named the Putting Students First Act.
A piece of legislation that shows a murderous contempt for bargaining processes, enshrined in law and in democratic principles. Legislation that will in fact further erode the quality of our public education, not improve it, effectively jeopardizing the rights of future workers, our students, whom they dare to use in the naming of this loathsome legislation.
Let us be reminded that despite the Drummond Commission stating that spending in Ontario is not out of control or excessive, the McGuinty government feels the need to create a crisis where there was none.
And in this death march to austerity, we must be also mindful that those hardest hit are the working poor, youth, part-time and non-unionized workers, racialized and immigrant communities. Let us also be reminded of how broad the death march is by giving our solidarity and support to the Chicago Teachers Union, who began their strike action today. We hope to hear more from our relatives abroad later on in the service.
But now, let us return to Ontario, as it is time to give thanks for the life of the deceased. Collective bargaining rights.
It is important for us to acknowledge and accept that something fundamental is changing, and to impress upon us, all of us, we call upon David DePoe, retired teacher but lifelong member of ETFO, to do the first eulogy, which will then be followed by lighting of candles and a moment of silence. Mr. DePoe.
Thank you. It truly is a sad day in the province of Ontario. The Orwellian naming of the bill is not the first time this has happened in the history of Ontario. We always know that the conditions that we work under as teachers are the conditions that our students learn in. And when the Toronto District School Board lays off 450 educational assistants and 150 secretaries and countless caretakers, we know that the quality of education is not what is required for the children of Ontario. So we are sorry that this has occurred. We only gained the right to collectively bargain for class size and preparation time so we could do a better job in 1975. Today, we are part of a long fight of teachers and other workers in this province and fighting for their rights. This bill overrides every existing law and statute. It overrides the Labor Relations Act, the Human Rights Act, and any other law. It's almost like a notwithstanding clause taking away your rights. So, for teachers, what does this mean? Well, if we're forced to take 3 days off, it's not a wage freeze, it's actually a wage cut, unpaid days. So, this is really not right. It's not fair, and it's way over the line, and we mourn and shame on this government for doing this to us and the education system in Ontario.
Thank you, David DePoe, for that wonderful eulogy. We're going to miss collective bargaining rights. All workers are going to miss collective bargaining rights.
And now for the next part of the funeral service, I call upon my brother Jason. He will lead us in a Shiva.
I'm going to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Feel free to sing along. Yiskadaw, v'yiskadash, shmei rabba, v'yalmov divro, shirusei, v'yamlich, nelchusei, Bashrachayon, Uvyomeyachon, Uvchayaye, Dechol Bayas Israel, by Agolo, Uvizma Koriv, Vimru, Amen. Yahesh Mei Robo Veroroch. I actually can't read Hebrew, but just about the words. But in Judaism, we have this saying that all good things must end. Actually, I don't really know, I just made that up, but I'm sure some rabbi must have said that at some point. But I don't see this today so much as an end as a new beginning, a beginning of sacrifice, because that's what we teachers do. We give. We give everything. And why not? We should be giving our salaries, our pensions, our benefits. Why not? Because, life isn't fair. Some people have to be poor so others can be rich. It's the way it is. Some rabbi must have said that too. Actually, probably not. Collective bargaining, you'll be missed, but what can you do?
So while this is an event that's been organized by rank and file teachers to show support for the leadership of the unions that have been leading the fight, today we would like to ask a few of them to say a few words to collective bargaining rights. First, we would like to call upon Katie McGovern, Recording Secretary of QP 4400.
I would like to thank you all for inviting us here, because the missing people seems to be often in the media, the support staff that together with the teachers provide education to our students. Somehow they're running like crazy to demonize teachers and make you the problem, make you the solution for the things that have nothing to do with any of us. As I last recall, we didn't have the money or the power to cause a financial crisis. We did not have the money or the power to be given bailouts. And mark my words, there were bailouts. They may have called it something different, but in Canada, our banks did not get off on their smartness and their ability to work. They were bailed out. They were given money to support themselves. And we are the ones who are paying for it. Why? Because they can. They can make us be responsible unless, and only unless, we continue to, while we're mourning, we're going to organize. Because that's what we do as working people. That's what we do, and we show the children every day. When we talk about logical consequences, if you made a mess, then you're going to have to clean it up. I'll help you, I'll show you the way, but it's your mess, you clean it up. And if we can't get that idea across to them directly, we're going to have to let our people in Queen's Park, and yes, even the federal government, understand clearly that if they choose to keep stomping on working people, they're going to be taught a lesson. And that lesson is going to be a hard one for them. It's called responsibility and accountability. Because we are the people who have created the wealth and who have created the culture and created the education system in this country. Local 4400 has a part of our bylaws that says we will defend our members by any means necessary. And we will continue to spend our time, our energy, and our money fighting and fighting and fighting, because these are principled questions. These are not just small little problems. These are principled questions, and I have to say that several people that we have known for a long time and worked with in the school system, because many of them used to be trustees, they know that what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're doing, and they can't possibly feel that we're not going to come back and struggle and fight, because that's who we are, it's what we do. When I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, he was alive as you and me. Said, "Joe, you're 10 years dead." "I never died," said he. Why? Because we're working people come together and they fight and they struggle in solidarity together. We can win. And so we are perhaps mourning the death of collective bargaining today, but I hope that we're going to come together very shortly and celebrate our victories tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and you have just holistically brought us and segued into one of the favorite songs of the deceased.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Says I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. In Salt Lake, Joe, I says to him, I'm standing by my bed. You framed me on a murder charge, says Joe, but I ain't dead. Says Joe, but I ain't dead. The copper bosses killed you, Joe. They shot you, Joe, says I. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe, I didn't die. Says Joe, I didn't die. And standing there as big as life and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they forgot to kill went on to organize, went on to organize. Well, we all know McGuinty thinks he's cut us down to size, but we all know just what Joe said. Don't mourn, get organized. Don't mourn, get organized. I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night sing, as live as you or me. Says I, said Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he, and we won't either. I never died, said he.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, and a good reminder that it is important to collectively grieve for our beloved, but also equally important to pass that moment of grief and move into organizing. And to inspire us with the first reading is Janice Patterson from OSSTF.
Thank you. This is a poem I put together the other day. It's called Goodbye Collective Bargaining Rights. Goodbye, old friend. Goodbye, guardian. Goodbye, defender. Goodbye, goodbye. You've been in our lives as long as we've been teaching, comforting like an old blanket, a magic blanket protecting us, keeping unjust working conditions and unfair employers at bay. You were the protective big brother we could turn to when the bullies tried to oppress us, tried to exploit us. But this guarantee of rights, which assured harmony among all, was arbitrarily torn up and torn from us. A murder victim of the draconian Bill 115, the monster created by the appalling McGuinty government, guaranteed to foster discord and resentment. This is a homicide, swift and unjust, an execution. We are mourning your loss. You are a victim of this malevolent government. Your death is the harbinger of much more conflict to come. But although we mourn tonight, we promise that we will engage in battle to bring you back in your entirety. This is not our final goodbye. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. We will not be silent. We will not rest until you are returned to us. We will weather this storm. We will outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary, for years. We shall fight in the courts. We shall fight at the ballot box. We shall fight by whatever means possible. We shall never surrender. This we all promise. This we all promise.
Thank you very much. Next, we'd like to introduce, although this is a rank and file member organized event, we thought it's very important for us to have some of our leadership here to speak, and we'd like to welcome up Frank Hahn, President of QB. Fred. QB.
In your grief, you messed up my name, and that's okay. Friends, overcome with grief and messing up people's names. It's okay. While we're here to talk about and think through our sadness, it's important to remember that collective bargaining rights are part of a fabric of rights protected by the Constitution of our country that belongs to each and every one of us here and each and every one of us in every community across this province and across this country. And while there is an attempt to remove those rights that are protected in law, it is only an attempt. It will not prevail. Human rights, the rights of workers, the rights of the people of our country will prevail. And so while we're here thinking about collective bargaining, it is important to remember that it is not just about workers in unions. It is about all working people. It is about our communities. It is about those schools, the kids in them, the people who clean them, the people who make sure that their backbone, their administrative backbone is working, the people who work with teachers and teachers themselves. There will be a day when we should reconvene here to celebrate the resurrection of collective bargaining rights. Not to be too particularly, with any one particular religion. And there will be another opportunity for us to celebrate a funeral. Because there is a government that the people of Ontario can smell coming. They smelled the Liberals coming in Kitchener-Waterloo. They smelled this cynical, self-interested politics that puts their political gain above our collective future. And they will smell that smell across the province, community by community, because we're going to help them to see it. We're going to help them to smell it. And by the next time there is an election, we'll be gathered here again to say goodbye to Dalton McGuinty and the Liberal government.
President of the Elementary Teachers of Toronto, and represents over 11,000 of us who teach right here in the Toronto District School Board. Welcome, Martin.
Friends, colleagues, citizens, we come here to bury collective bargaining rights, but also to praise them. Collective bargaining rights have been our friends, faithful and true. But Dalton has decided they are inconvenient, and Dalton is an honourable premier. And if I may segue from the Bard of Avon to the Python of Monty, you may remember that scene, the answer to bring out your dead. But I'm not dead yet, was the plaintive cry. And I think I can hear that from the coffin here. Collective bargaining rights are under attack. There is an international virus around that is infecting collective bargaining rights, but I don't believe the cause is over yet. I think with care, with appropriate care, with fight back, we can yet save collective bargaining rights. So let's start from there tonight. Let's heal the patient. Let's bring it up. Let's not wait for resurrection. Let's keep it alive, and let's move on from there. Thank you very much, sisters and brothers.
Thank you for that very important reminder. All right, and next in our service we have Janet Santos, and she's going to do the next reading.
Thank you. Today we mourn the loss of our collective bargaining rights, but I believe in the same thing that Pythagoras, Plato, and Socrates believed in, reincarnation. We'll get our rights back. We just have to fight for them. I always say teachers don't want to go on strike. We want to be there for our kids. But I wouldn't, if I didn't put up a fight, I wouldn't be able to look my students in the eyes. Because we're essentially protecting their future rights as workers in the workplace. I invite Ontario teachers to fight this fight by doing what we do best. We need to teach. So I invite Ontario teachers to bring our classes to the streets, whether it's on the picket lines or while we're thinking about taking it to the picket lines. Get your classes out into the streets. Invite the community to our teach-ins, where we teach the importance of preserving our collective bargaining rights. Teach our communities lessons about the labor movement. Teach about our brothers and sisters who went on strike in 1872 to legalize unionization in Toronto, the printers. Teach about the 1942 gold miners' strike in Kirkland Lake, which won the Collective Bargaining Act of 1943 in Ontario. And thank you to Caitlin Hewitt-White, my colleague, who's compiled all this research. I invite Ontario teachers to share your research with each other. We can have fun doing it and post it online. There's a lot of lessons to be taught around the labor movement. We need to get out on the streets and teach Ontarians about those migrant workers in Leamington coming up from Mexico and Jamaica, making $7.50 an hour, 10-hour work days, 7-day work week, right? And if they get sick or hurt themselves, they're on a plane home. They can't complain or they lose their job. Their employers call them donkeys and threaten to kick them if they don't work fast enough. We need to teach Ontarians about this, because if we teach about it, surely the people of Ontario will not stand for this type of exploitation. We need to fight this fight together to put our rights in place and keep them there for our students, the next generation of workers. Let's bring our rights back by doing what we do. Teachers gotta teach.
And that brings us to a brother in the struggle. Brendan is an organizer for the YYZ Solidarity Group that does work around the Air Canada workers. So we'd like to invite him here to give some of his thoughts on the deceased.
Hello everyone. I'm here to bring my sympathies to you from the YYZ Mobilization Committee, which consists of Air Canada employees, specifically the flight attendants represented by CUPE, the maintenance, baggage, and ramp workers represented by the IAMAW, and the sales, reservation, and ticket agents represented by the CAW. So, some of you might have heard about our struggles before, which we lost our dear friend collective bargaining rights too. It started about 2 springs ago when the CEO of Air Canada decided to give himself a 75% raise. And then to pay for that, he asked the workers to give up concessions, to not have wage increases and to lose sick days and to have less security in their jobs. So, like the teachers, the airport workers face similar government attacks on their collective bargaining rights. The dishonorable Minister of Labour, Lisa Raitt, punished CAW 2002 by imposing back-to-work legislation 2 days into their strike in the spring of 2011. Her and the rest of the Harper government continued to use back-to-work legislation as a punishment to workers when they prevented the IAMAW as well as the CUPE locals, which is the baggage attendants and the flight attendants, from actually going on strike, removing their rights to collectively bargain and to strike altogether. And this spring, the CEO of Air Canada was rewarded for this kind of action. He was given a $5 million retention bonus to help try to break the unions. So we decided to do something. I hope you guys decided to do it too. We decided to fight back against the back-to-work legislation. And our bosses and their friends in the government. So the baggage handlers walked out in support of the CAW strike last 2 springs ago. We all have followed around, harassed, bugged, occupied the offices of Lisa Raitt, telling her we're not going to put up with these continuous attacks on our collective bargaining rights. And when she doesn't give back to our messages, which she never does, she never calls us back, she never is in her office, I wonder what she does all day actually, we go to her public events too. Many of the flight attendants voiced their concern and displeasure about when their bargaining rights were under attack through working with the Occupy Toronto movement. And finally, the IAM staged a walkout to protest the firing of workers that slow clapped, just like this, when Lisa Raitt got off a plane. Yeah, but it should be noted that this walkout that was over the disciplining and firing of members resulted not only on the best imposed contract of all of them, but it also got rid of all disciplinary action against the workers and got managers fired. So in summary, we want all teachers to know that you're not alone in this issue, and that we're going to help you fight the back to work legislation just like we would fight it in any industry. Because we learned one thing from our passing of our dear friend, the collective bargaining rights, is they don't care between what the difference is a public or a private employer anymore is. All workers are treated the same by the government and all levels of government. We're all under attack. And we have one thing and the one thing to do is stand up together and fight back.
We say fight back. They say cut back. We say fight back. They say cut back. We say fight back.
My name's Tim Heffernan, high school teacher, York Mills Collegiate. Today, the Chicago Teachers Union walked out. They hit the bricks. After long preparation, after long struggles, negotiations with the Chicago schools and the Chicago mayor. The person who spoke to us via Skype last Thursday, his name is Bill Lamb, and we have managed to get him by cell phone tonight, and we're hoping that the technology is going to work and that he's going to address us now. So Bill, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Okay, greetings brothers and sisters in Toronto. Over 26,000 teachers, members of the Chicago Teachers Union, went on strike today. We are taking on the former Chief of Staff for President Obama in a war of will to save education, public education, not just in our city, but in the United States and even in the world. We have a difficult contract in front of us where CPS not only wants to take back money, but they really are seeking to destroy teaching as a career and as a profession. So we are really fighting for our lives here. Many teachers have been laid off because of school declining enrollment, and CPS refuses to allow them to be rehired in other schools. So we are fighting mad. And I'm glad you say you're going to fight back, because it is a fight, and fighting is what we have to do. We are fighting also to guarantee that our school district provides schools with adequate supply, with support staff, with well-maintained buildings. All of these things we have not had for many years. Now we are saying we are striking until we can guarantee these things for our students. We stand in solidarity with the teachers of Toronto and of Ontario Province in your fight, and we gladly accept your support.
Now, as of any funeral, at many funerals, we'd like to give an opportunity for you, friends and family and relatives, to have a few words to say to collective bargaining rights.
Was in grade 9 in the 1975 teachers' strike for secondary school. I lived through the Snowbelin crisis for education, the NDP days that we had to take, the Harris fiasco. Enough is enough. Stop it. That's right. Be fair, respect collective bargaining, and stop this nonsense.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I'm a new teacher. I'm in my second year of teaching, and what McGuinty doesn't realize is he's inspiring a young generation of teachers to take up the fight for our collective bargaining rights, and he's making a lot of us pretty angry.
I'm proud to say that I'm the third generation to protect collective bargaining rights in my family. My grandfather helped organize the unions in the grain elevators in Thunder Bay back in the early 1940s, and both my parents have been union supporters, and I'm the third generation. I hope it continues.
I just wanted to do a gentle reminder that there's a support system behind teachers. There's custodial staff, EAs, there's a whole gamut of people that are kind of quietly on the sidelines, but we're there fighting the same fight, and I just wanted to remind and acknowledge that. Thank you.
I just want to say that it boggles my mind that we're having to even have this event. I mean, it's very sad that's what's happened to collective bargaining rights. But if the government came forward and said, we have a plan to build the best medical system, the best health system in the world, and we're going to do it by cutting doctors' salaries, everybody's going to vote for that, right? We're going to build the best public education system in the world, and we're going to do it by paying our teachers as little as possible. It's not going to work. If you want to build a quality education system, you've got to pay people properly. You've got to make sure their working conditions are solid and secure. Our security, our job security, our job is much dependent on our creativity. We have to be able to take risks in our work. We can't have somebody standing over our shoulder who can fire us if they just don't agree with some way we're teaching, even if we're making progress. We have to have the right to hang on to our jobs, our working conditions, and decent salaries to ensure that we have the ability to deliver the kind of education we want to deliver, and that future generations have the ability to do the same.
Sisters and brothers, I just wanted to add a word of solidarity from substitute teachers. We're with teachers and education workers in this struggle right through to the end, to the resurrection of our collective bargaining rights. It was in 1990 that I was proud to be part of a team that organized the first union for substitute teachers in Toronto and the first strike for substitute teachers in the fall of 1990. We won not only improved wages, but benefits and a measure of job security. And we did that by exercising free collective bargaining rights, including the right to strike. And that remains as vital for all of us, for our collective future, now as ever. Let's continue the struggle. We will win.
Good evening, folks. I feel like I've been to this funeral before. 20 years ago, I taught in the community college system in this province. 20 years ago, we had the Bob Ray days. We got frozen for 3 years. I was a young teacher, I was younger, frozen at step 5 of 16. So my heart goes out to my younger colleagues and school boards who are looking at being frozen at their step level. It's unacceptable. A few years later, we had a different government, and then I found myself out of a job. I know how dire this fight can be, folks. Do not give up. Do not give 1 inch.
Greetings, I'm a Toronto Secondary Unit member of OECTA, and I am appalled at what my union has done in striking this deal with the government. And I think it has to be understood that there are those of us who absolutely do not agree with what has happened, and we find it really disgusting that, you know, OECTA is seen as this kind of great beacon of hope, you know, for collective bargaining in this province, and it is exactly the opposite. And I call them a non-union. They don't actually deserve the right of being called a union at this point or ever. And so I just want to also say that I think it's very important that you give support to those of us within OECTA, as I am pressuring my union to give me answers, and they refuse to do that. They refuse to call me back. But to continue to support us, to be able to cause that dissent within our own union. And that's why I came tonight, because I knew that my federation would not be here. But I think it's really important that you know that there are those of us who do not agree at all with what has happened.
There's a provision in this bill which says that nothing proposed by this bill can be remedied in a court of law. And this is absolutely unprecedented. I think it's Article 15 in the bill that says nothing brought forth by this bill can be fought in a court of law. And there's only one word to describe this, and that word is tyrannical. And with the amount of wealth that exists in this province, in the business sector and in the finance sector, to target teachers and to poison the atmosphere of what I consider to be one of the very most important practices that we have as a society, right? The education of our youth. There's another word for that, and that word's despicable. And I just want to say, hang in there, buddy, because we love you.
I think the appropriate line is, alas, collective bargaining, I knew him well. Okay, I'm having a second bite of the cherry, but I'll try to be brief. I'm a history teacher, and as a history teacher, you get to know how important the concept of memory is. And I think that's one of the things we have to get in our heads. And it was brought home by the introductory remarks by David Tebow when he went over the history of collective bargaining in this province, that especially for the new teachers, we have to give them lessons in labour history so that they understand that the gains we made in the 70s and 80s didn't come easily. We had to fight for them. And the setbacks that we are suffering now aren't going to be permanent setbacks. There will be times when we will recover our strength and we can move forward. And before I leave, I just want to make a comment and a thank you to the organisers of this event. This was the people who brought you this event were the same people back in June who brought you the grade in Dundas Square when teachers brought their marking and sat down in the sun, did their marking and said, I am a teacher, this is what I do on my weekends. And they got lots of support from the public as they stopped to ask questions.
Take this moment to let people know that this is the beginning. This is a kind of resurrection, as has been mentioned. And the group that organized this is fired up and ready to go. And we've got sign-up sheets, so if you're as fired up, please sign up and join in. It takes many voices. And as the brother just said, we can't remain silent. And it's not just our fight as education workers, but it's all workers that we need to sort of build our solidarity amongst all workers.
Inspiration through the workers' blood shall run. There can be no power greater than beneath the sun. Yet what force is firm and weaker than the feeble strength of one? For the union